Master of None Season 3, aka Moments in Love. And the fact that it has like a separate season title or subtitle is fitting because in a lot of ways it's a departure. Season 3 is a departure from what we've seen seasons 1 and 2, which was the very comedic, loosely based on the life of Aziz Ansari, both personally and professionally, and his friends just living in New York and trying to figure things out on both those fronts, professionally and personally. Whereas for season 3, the official synopsis is Denise and her wife Alicia take center stage this season, grappling with doubts and heartache when a rift emerges in their happy marriage. The series, Master of None, was created by Aziz Ansari and Alan Yang, his friend, which he met working as a writer on Parks and Rec. And seasons 1 and 2 are largely written by Aziz and Alan. They both run a writer's room together, and they have a group of writers, with a special exception for within season 2, the coming out episode, which is centered around Denise's character, the character that's one of the main focuses of season 3, played by Lena Waithe. She wrote an episode of season 2, a coming out episode where she came out of the closet to her family on Thanksgiving, I believe, or Christmas, or some holiday. And in writing that episode, she was the first African-American woman to earn an Emmy for Best Comedy Writing. But aside from that, the writing for seasons 1 and 2, again, is very comedic, written by Aziz, which is a stand-up comedian, and Alan Yang, along with the writer's room. There's a contrast there as well when it comes to season 3. Season 3 was written by Aziz Ansari and Lena Waithe. Now, I watched a really cool interview that I'll link to in the episode notes for you guys to check out, which was really cool, by the way, of Netflix to do it this way. I don't know if it was like purposeful or if they plan to do more, but I like the idea of it, where in promoting this season of the show, Chris Rock interviewed Aziz Ansari. And what I mean by, I don't know if Netflix is going to plan to do more of this, but I think they should, is instead of having like a specific show within Netflix that interviews folks within the Netflix universe to, promote shows and stuff like that, just have like their friends or somebody that they want interviewing them to interview them. You know what I mean? Just have like one-offs, and you'll wind up with probably a pretty eclectic, interesting mix of people that intimately know or at least have a relationship with the star or director or writers of certain shows that are on promo runs. And the beauty of things like that now is that you can have both. You can still have, let's say Chris Rock just has a show now or within Netflix where he's interviewing people and helping them promote their shows. Like, you can still have the other idea also. You know what I mean? That's like the beauty of like the online and digital age, and different people gravitate towards different things. But anyway, I digress. I saw a dope interview with them too that gives a lot of insights into how this season came about. And I'm going to give you guys some of my takeaways from it, and I will link to that interview in the episode notes. If you guys want to check it out, please do. And in that interview, Aziz said that, pre-COVID, they already had a 10-episode season planned, and it was written. They even got to the point of doing table reads, and Aziz was actually in like at least half or more of the episodes within the season. But this was early March 2020, and then that's when the threat of COVID was beginning to happen, right? So when they got to the point of those table reads, they decided to shut down production for 3 weeks to see how the whole like COVID thing would play out. And obviously it played out the way it did, and that 3 weeks turned into a much longer time. A quick aside, which is cool to me hearing that, is that they did at least have like that full 10 episode season planned, because after Aziz's Me Too incident, we thought Master of None was just not coming back at all, which really would have sucked because it's such a great show. And also the incident with Aziz is like, the consensus for most people is that it was a bad date that he had, but at a very wrong time. It was like at the height of the Me Too movement, so it got caught up in that wave. So for such a good show that's just starting out, had 2 seasons out, to have gone away for essentially a non-incident would have been a huge disservice to the fans, to the artists, the writers, the actors, the team of folks that put this together. So I'm definitely glad it did come back. Now, so what happens next? They decide to shut down production for approximately 3 weeks. COVID turns into a much longer issue. And then after a few months, they start thinking about reshooting again and seeing places where they can start shooting. But a lot of the season, the way it's written, it was a very non-COVID friendly shooting schedule. There was like a lot of shoots in like different places basically. And then Aziz and Lena are friends that, met on the show, but stayed friends and stay in touch. And, they speak to each other about relationship issues and stuff like that. And the way Aziz tells it, those phone conversations between them during this time were the seeds for Moments in Love for season 3. So Aziz spoke to his co-creator, Alan, and said that he has this idea of writing this separate other season with Lena, and pitched it to Lena and to Netflix, and they were on board. And it was much more COVID friendly. Like you guys will see if you've seen it, If you haven't seen it, you will know that the entire season, it's 5 episodes, it's not 10. And 2, it's 99% based on the lives of these 2 married women that live together in one house. So it's like one location, handful of locations, but mainly one location, and a handful of people, mainly just them 2. So it's much more COVID friendly from that shooting perspective that everyone was worried about at the time. And what's cool is that when they switch gears to write Moments in Love, the way they wrote it was Aziz wrote a first draft of the script, and Lena would give a pass through, would give him he would send it to Lena. Lena would send him voice notes and her pass through of the script, and they wrote the script back and forth like that. Then from a directorial perspective, Aziz wanted to direct all 5 episodes, and he did. And he says in this interview that I referenced earlier as well, that his style of shooting, the cinematography style, was inspired by Ozus, a Japanese director, which never used dolly shots and never moved the camera. Each shot, if you notice, within this season are still one angle shots. And the way Aziz described it is that you feel like there's nothing happening, but by the end of the episode, you get some sort of emotional gut punch, which I think is pretty accurate. He also says this directorial style was also inspired by Chantal Akerman, which is a Belgian director, and she would do things like hold on the character for a long time when they were doing things like washing the dishes or cleaning a tub and mundane tasks. And you'll see this throughout this season of Moments in Love, where the camera will just hold on Lena doing laundry or washing dishes or smoking a joint, or Alicia wiping down an antique because she works at an antique shop, etc. And I thought it was pretty cool. It was definitely a different look, a different pacing, of course, from seasons 1 and 2, but just in general, it was it had a very different feel to most of the shows or movies that I watch. And it was interesting. It felt kind of very artsy fartsy. That's a technical term. And I don't know. I like shit like that sometimes, even if it goes over my head, which I'm sure a lot of it does. But I like being a fly on that wall and just experiencing something different like that. The way it's shot also felt very, very much like a play to me, something I would see on Broadway, which I also like. So maybe that's why I like this. Something else that I really like, just from a technical point of view, which you can't get away with on traditional television, is that each of the episodes are different length. For example, the first and 4th episodes are about an hour long, and the other 3 are between 22 minutes and 32 minutes long. And the first episode is kind of setting the pace for what this season is going to be. And the 4th was just so emotionally heavy that it definitely warranted that extra time. So I'm glad it wasn't rushed and squeezed into a 22 or 32 minute episode. And in this season, we see that Lena's character, Denise rather, has become pretty successful. She wrote a book that was a hit. She's married now. They own a house in like upstate New York with a lot of property, and she's working but struggling with writing her second book, which, minus having monumental success with my first novel or my first book, I can definitely relate to everything else. And I'm sure a lot of the fellow Spun Today writing community out there can. Then Aziz's character that we started seeing gaining momentum within his professional career over the previous 2 seasons and like gaining success, he kind of like flipped with Lena. She started getting a lot of success and he started regressing professionally. He had to move back in with his parents. He was in a relationship now with with this pretentious girlfriend that he's with, that's like living with him or fiance or something, and that he's constantly butting heads with. And we get all that from the like one of like 2 scenes throughout the entire series that Aziz is in, because he really focused on directing and not like being the center of this season. And we also find out that Lena and Aziz's characters hadn't spoken in a while. That's how like caught up she is like in her life and writing her second book and trying to work on her second book. She's kind of like pushed people away in a sense, or is not like really paying too much attention to the folks around her within her orbit, including her wife that she lives with, who we learn wants to have a baby and has broached the subject with Lena before, and she kind of sort of mentions not being ready, and then mentions his work and stress and like stuff like that, but then like gives into the idea of it. And I like the way this show, or this, well, the show, yeah, but this season specifically highlighted having real conversations within relationships, because like that, like these are 2 lesbian women, 2 black lesbian women, and I am a straight Latino guy, and I can still relate to a lot of the conversations that we're having. You know what I mean? So that the ability to pull that off means that you've created and written something universally relatable. And what I mean by that is having real conversations, like discussing the decision to have a kid, which I know I had with my wife when she was ready before I was, or getting married, getting engaged, moving in together. These like big life altering decisions that we all make and make with that someone else that's in our lives, right? And just like conversations about life. Like, for example, in episode 2, they had a really good conversation, Lena's character and Alicia's character, in front of a fireplace. And they're just talking about life and people getting sick and dying and stuff like that. I think it was Lena that says, you know, it doesn't matter what you do in this life. This is what happens. You get old and you get sick. And those like mundane feeling conversations, but that are about existential things, are something that drew me into this season. Then I believe around season 3 is when they pretty much find out that they both cheated on each other and decide to split up, get a divorce, sell the house. And actually, let me rewind that a bit. Before that happened, they agreed to give it a shot to have a kid. And my only gripe with the show is this character right here. They decide to, you know, go through the whole IVF treatment process. That's in vitro fertilization. And in discussing finding a donor, a semen donor, they speak about a friend of theirs, a mutual friend that they have. Alicia says she thinks he would be a good candidate if he would be willing to. And Lena agrees. And they invite him over to dinner to pitch him the idea. And he's like completely fine with it. Goes with it like nothing. Like, you know, he's lending them $100 or something like that. Just like, it's like nothing. That's my only gripe with this series. This season. Because that character, he definitely serves a purpose, right? Throughout the season, the scenes that he's in, he's there as the sperm donor that they both know. And he also highlights the hardships to come when Alicia's character, or Alicia rather, asks him if he's like known anybody that's gone through this before, and he, which was a bit on the nose, which is again why I have an issue with this character, but I see the purpose he's serving, so I'm a little torn, but feel that there was like a better way to write him. Anyway, he of course knows somebody else that went through it and, you know, broke down, you know, it's tough, it's expensive, etc., blah blah blah, and kind of like foreshadowed what was to come. But besides that, you know, even after the divorce and like that volatility in their relationship, that he was already down to, you know, donate his sperm for the whole thing, he was still down, would still meet with Alicia and, donate whenever he had to donate while she was going through IVF treatments. And, even offered, do you want me to be in the kid's life? Do you not want me to be in the kid's life? Like, who does that? He was like he was like a saint. You know what I mean? It was just like, we need a character who is not going to be in the picture, but who does every single thing else perfectly and saintly like, and is willing to donate sperm and then disappear. You know what I mean? Like, he checked out the boxes, served those purposes, but I don't know. Just like seemed is unrealistic in my opinion. And that's not to say that nobody would do that for a friend or something like that, but the nonchalantness with how he did it and how his character approached that was just didn't seem authentic to me. And I could be wrong. Maybe there are sperm angels like him out there, but that was just my read on it. But anyway, aside from that, everything else in this season I enjoyed. So after the split, their divorce, Alicia has decisions to make. She is now living on her own. She had a goal of opening up her own antique shop, and this IVF treatment thing is very expensive, and she realizes she can only do either or. Try the IVF treatments or go rent the space that was like a dream space for her antique shop. And she went the route of the IVF treatments because her biological clock was ticking. Her character was 37, I believe. And the doctor sat down with her and explained to her that she's at the peak of where things, the likelihood of her getting pregnant start declining very quickly. And the show, I thought, did a cool job of highlighting the ignorance behind archaic insurance codes and how her insurance wouldn't cover this treatment, the IVF treatment, because they don't have a code specific to a lesbian woman going through IVF treatment. But if it was a heterosexual woman that was trying to get pregnant but couldn't, then the insurance would cover it. So it was a fucked up archaic technicality type of thing there. And she has a really funny and heartfelt conversation with her mom on the phone when she is trying to psych herself into her first IVF injection shot, because she's doing them all herself, administering them all herself for the length of the treatment, because it would be more expensive if she got paid a nurse to do it. And she pretty much just has to inject her belly and take certain pills, etc. So that was a pretty cool scene there. And we see within episodes 3 and 4, mainly in 4, the hour-long episode, which was almost all about Alicia, her roller coaster ride with this IVF treatment and trying to get pregnant. The first go around, she has a very low egg count at the end of everything, only 5 eggs, 2 or 3 of which survived to get to the next phase, but none of which were successfully fertilized, so she lost all of them. And that's after, going through all this expensive treatment. And then she had a decision to make: either try it again, which again is, double the cost, literally trying it again. And with little to no hope that she would be successful in getting pregnant. And she decides to go for it. And the second time, she winds up getting 13 eggs, 5 of which were successfully inseminated, or fertilized, rather. I'm not sure what the exact technical terms are, but it was a great outing, or a great result rather. But then she hit a roadblock where they found polyps within her uterus that they had to operate on and remove before attempting to put the fertilized eggs in her uterus and make her pregnant. So they had to freeze the eggs. So then you think, it's kind of drama, ratcheting up in the episode, and you think that something else is going to happen, but then she winds up successfully getting pregnant, which is a really emotional scene. And then later in the next and last episode, we find out that she did successfully, give birth and have a child. And I'm going to cut to a quick article that I read that I want to read this excerpt from, that underscored perfectly the writing and the Aziz as a director's decision to shoot in this way. And by in this way, I mean, you see this hour-long ordeal, roller coaster ride of emotions of going through IVF treatments and not spending all your money on it, not successfully getting pregnant, then deciding to do it again as a last ditch effort, and then getting pregnant, and then not knowing if you're going to be able to have the kid because of the polyps, and then being, having the kid, you go through all that, but then you don't see like the kid being born or her raising the kid or her, like that, like iconic shot of the baby being born and her holding the baby for the first time or something like that. You know what I mean? Like that wasn't the emotional shot. It was you're pregnant, and then fast forwarded to a different episode where she already has the kid and we don't even see the kid. It's just like a mention of like her talking to him on the phone, or her rather, as a little girl named Lola. And it was definitely an interesting decision to do that. And this excerpt from this article, I think, describes it perfectly. And the article is written by Brian Talerco on RogerEbert.com. He's the editor of that site. You guys remember Roger Ebert, from Siskel and Ebert? They used to like review movies back in the day on like Channel 7 or something like that late at night. Give it like 2 thumbs up or a thumbs up and a thumbs down, and they would go back and forth and critique movies. Anyway, Brian Talerco is the editor of the site RogerEbert.com, and he wrote this. What's interesting is how Ansari, the director, will spend an incredible amount of time on what might be considered mundane and then speed through major events with montage. It creates a sense of leafing through old photographs. Sometimes we linger over one for a long time, and sometimes we leaf through the years in a matter of seconds. And I thought he said that perfectly, because it was like we were stuck in that moment, or those like series of moments in time with Alicia and her struggle through trying to get pregnant, and then like speeds through and fast forwards, a few years later. Very cool and different and interesting. And the alternative to that, which would have been, us seeing that iconic, shot of her, going through labor and the pregnancy and giving birth and holding the baby and seeing her raise the baby and stuff like that. Although it would have been satisfying, it wouldn't have been anything new. We wouldn't have been seeing anything that we hadn't seen before. Whereas this way, we get the closure of the fact that she did have the kid and everything is all good, and we got to see it in a different way. And then in that last final episode, episode 5, we find out that she had the baby. We find out that her and Lena still stayed in, or Lena's character, Alicia and Denise, still stayed in touch and contact, and were both with other women at this point. Both had kids at this point, or one kid each, and both were cheating on their spouses with each other, which again was like the reason why they like got divorced. And the season comes full circle where they go back to the house where they used to live in together, because it's now an Airbnb, and Lena's character rented it as a surprise to like take her up there, and they got away for a weekend together. And a funny ass quote from that episode is that Denise tells Alicia, just be ready to see the decorations are a lot less black than when we used to live here. And she goes, they definitely colonized it. And I thought that was pretty funny. And then we learn that Lena still hasn't been able to write that second book. She's like super hesitant, has a lot of like trepidation in being able to like move forward. She has like a corporate writing gig again, a 9-to-5 to like pay the bills, and she hates it. She feels like it's hell. She literally describes it as such in a very relatable way again. And she compares, having the success that she had before with her first book and all the like money and fame and acclaim that came with that, and the financial freedom that it awarded her, and she felt like she was in heaven. And then now, where she has to go back to the corporate grind, it feels like hell, where she has to like answer to people and be at other folks' like beck and call and work weekends, etc. And she said something interesting, which was that one of the hardest things is the fact that she did get to see what heaven was like with that success. She felt that if she never got to feel what that was like, then maybe her current situation wouldn't feel as bad. Maybe it wouldn't feel like hell because she wouldn't know any different. And I thought that was an interesting take on the situation. And we also learned that Alicia's character wound up opening up her own antique shop after all. So she was able to get the kid and the antique shop in the end, which was like dope for her and her character arc. And another funny scene, which I'll leave you guys with, was when they're in bed at the end and Lena's character is eating a moon pie in bed, and then Alicia's like, oh, you don't have to hide like stuff from me anymore. And the characters are like very like candid with each other, and in knowing that they're like cheating on their spouses with each other and saying, you know, we don't have to wear a mask with each other, we don't have to lie to each other anymore. And then Lena offers her like a piece of the moon pie. She tries it. She's like, damn, that's good. Did you put that in the microwave? And Lena goes, of course I did. I know how to eat moon pie. I thought that was funny. And lastly, I lied with saying that I only had one gripe for this season. My second gripe is that it was only 5 episodes long. Even though it was really dope as like a short series, kind of like a series that I've been meaning to like rewatch, which is The Night Of on HBO with Riz Ahmed. That was short, but that was just like perfect. So maybe this is that in that way. But this was so good to me that it makes me not want the other Master of None to come back. You know what I mean? Like the comedic seasons 1 and 2. And I'm even lying when I say that because I really want that as well. You know what would be crazy? What would be really dope is if they do like a Marvel multiverse-esque type of thing with Master of None and try to do it in this like comedy drama world and continue a Moments of Love multiverse arc where Aziz's character is down, Lena's is up. It focuses more on Lena and Alicia and their ups and downs, and Aziz is a secondary character in that universe. And then also continue the Master of None that we're used to, where it's focused on Aziz's character and Lena's a secondary character in his universe. And even if the worlds are a little bit different, just have like some of the same like overlapping characters, you can get away with that because it's like this multiverse setup. So you don't have to be consistent between Master of None and Moments in Love. And you satisfy 2 fan bases, which a lot of folks that loved Master of None, and by a lot of folks, I mean a handful of friends of mine that also enjoyed it, like I did, weren't that happy about this season and like the turn that it took. But I personally loved it, and I know other folks did too. So I feel there's like a semi-split within the fan base, and this is a way that you can satisfy both. Again, I think that would be really dope. Anyway, folks, that is season 3 of Master of None, aka Moments in Love, which is streaming now on Netflix, and I highly recommend it.